Cheers. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for having me. My name is Kate. I'm the head of trends at Insider Trends. I'll tell you a little bit more about me in a second. But first of all, I want to do a very quick quiz. So let's imagine we're in 2035. Now, how much more powerful do you think the internet will be then than it is today? Can you put your hand up for me if you think it's going to be at least 10,000 times as powerful as it is today? Okay, a couple of people there. Can you put your hand or keep your hand up for me if you think it's going to be at least 100,000 times as powerful? Okay, good, right. How about 1 million times? Yeah. 5 million times? 10 million times? 100 million times? Or 500 million times? Okay, well, no one has their hand up. There's one vague hand up over there. So if your hand was fully up, you'd be in the right ballpark. The internet, or the power of the internet, is developing at an exponential rate. So it's thought that with an exponentially growing number of connected objects, and with all of those objects developing and getting better at an exponential rate, the internet will be about 500 million times as powerful as it is right now. So we're really only scratching the surface of what's possible. And there's all sorts of other things in this sphere that are also developing in an exponential way. So in 2035, there'll be 21 times as many people online as were online back in 2000. Internet speed will be about 1 terabyte a second. So I have a 1 terabyte hard drive at the moment, so I can imagine downloading my entire digital life, all of my photos, my documents, my files, onto my mobile in a single second, almost for free. The number of connected objects will increase by about 5,000 times between 2000 and 2035. It will be cheaper to sequence your own DNA than it will be to flush your toilet come 2035. And that's from an original cost of about $2.5 billion back in 2000. And even the rate of developments of companies is speeding up. So back around 2000, it took Google 8 years to go from 0 to a $1 billion valuation. Last July, Jet.com opened its doors to the public. 4 months later, that had a $1 billion valuation. So I don't know what the world of valuations is going to look like come 2035, but if these other trends are anything to go by, it's going to be fast, I think. So that's just a little bit of information to whet your appetite about what we're going to talk about. I just want to tell you a little bit about me and my company, Insider Trends. Everything we do is about helping companies like you and companies like this understand what's coming next. So I like to think we take quite relatively complicated subjects and we make them accessible and actionable for companies like this and you. And I do what I do because I believe there's a better way of doing things. Every year there's new technology, there are new ideas that mean that businesses can do business in a better way, they can be more profitable, simpler to run, and they can also make life better for their customers and their employees as well. And particularly with the stuff in this presentation, I almost feel I have a little bit of a responsibility to tell you some of this stuff because it's game-changing. Now, as much as I would love to tell you that this is a picture of me last week in my office preparing for this presentation, this is sadly not how we work. There might be some quite bold statements in this presentation, but really the trends that we're using, or the research we're using, is based on some quite large megatrends that have proved to be relatively consistent over, well, the past 60 years in some cases. So we're looking at the development rates of technology, but also how quickly people are moving into cities, how life opportunities are getting better for people all over the world. And that's been the case for, quite a number of years now. And even though not everything in this presentation may be perfect or may come true exactly when I say it will come 2035, I still think it's worth taking half an hour of your time to think about what's coming next, because it may not be perfect, but it's certainly a good idea to think about what's coming next, because some of these changes are coming at us almost like a tidal wave. And as businesses, we have a choice about whether to do nothing and potentially get wiped out by some of these changes, or to try and understand what's coming next and really take advantage of these changes and use that to push our businesses forward. So there are 3 key trends that I want to talk to you about. The first one is that the world is going to be, as I said, moving forward at a much, much faster rate. That rate of change itself is going to be accelerating. And with that, we're going to have a lot more capability as individuals. We're going to have a lot more empowerment within our own individual spheres. And with that as well, living standards for people all around the world is going to rise. And just before we get stuck in, I want to say one particular thing about human nature, in that we're going to talk a lot about technology. But even though technology will definitely change the world around us, human nature doesn't. Technology essentially gives us new ways to meet new and different ways to meet age-old needs. So it may be that, you go around to visit a friend in 2035, you take a driverless car, but when you get there, you're going to want to have a cup of tea and talk about how you're worried about how your daughter's doing in school or how she's being messed around by boys, the exact same things that we talk about today. So first of all, our first key trend, we can talk about how the world is speeding up. Now, and to do this, we really need to talk about exponentially developing technology. Now, we're here in IBM, almost the home of Moore's Law. So we all know Moore's Law, this idea that computer processing power doubles every couple of years. And what this means is that the smartphones in our pockets are actually smarter and more powerful than the computers that put man on the moon back in the 60s. But what some people don't realize is that there's a whole raft of other technologies that are also developing along a similar exponential growth curve. So taking green energy, for instance, back in 1984, a kilowatt hour of green energy cost about $30. A couple of years ago, it cost about 16 cents. And as of this year, it costs about 4 cents, actually, from some providers. And at the same time as technology developing exponentially and giving us access to more innovative capabilities, actually humans are becoming or accessing more innovative ways of working together as well. Come 2035, we're going to see about 70% of the world's population living in cities. Cities are proven to be more innovative environments than countrysides, rural environments. And also we're going to see more than double the number of people online come 2035 than today, so 7 billion people online. As I'm sure you know, the internet being another extremely innovative network, more people can learn new things, contribute new ideas. And so I think what we're going to see is once we have all these new innovative technologies overlaid with more innovative ways of thinking, that level of growth is just going to compound and skyrocket. So, looking back over the past 15 years, we've all seen a number of key industries be disrupted. A number of big players that we thought we'd never see go out of business, go out of business. But what I think is going to happen next is with this huge rate of change, the number of industries that are going to be disrupted themselves are going to increase exponentially. So these were just some kind of ideas that we were sketching out of different industries that might be disrupted. What I think is interesting here is that almost every industry we could think of appears on this list. And so for businesses, what this means is that the future is relatively uncertain, or certainly doing business on a day-to-day basis come 2035 will be a lot less certain than it will be today. The lifespan of businesses is dramatically shortening. If you started a business back in 1920 that went on to be successful, it would last an average of 67 years. Whereas if you started a business this decade that went on to be successful, it would last an average of 15 years. And also from an employee perspective, it used to be that the half-life of a skill was about 30 years, and now it's 5 years. So businesses are really going to have to adapt at a much faster rate. And just to give you an understanding of what this looks like in a more visual level, we can take an example of one very well-established linear business, Hilton Group, that was founded in 1919. And this is just my little sketch map. But every year, essentially, it added more and more hotels to the point where this year it's expected to sell around 186 million room nights. So a very successful linear business. We can compare this to a very successful exponential business, Airbnb, everyone's favorite. So this was founded back in 2008, and every year doubled the number of room nights that it sold. So by the end of this year, it's expected that they'll sell 139 million room nights. And I'm not sure if you can even see this at the back, this little shape here. But what's interesting about this is you almost can't see it on the chart. The rate of growth is that extreme. But this is, I guess, the difference between a linear business and an exponential one. So in order for these more established, or any business in fact, to be successful going forward, I think the key here is flexibility, is really putting flexibility into the organizational structure and also the way teams think as well, focusing much more on quick, lean experiments so you can test different assumptions, gather data, and then move forward, almost planning nothing in the long term before it's released. And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I do want to emphasize that this is a really critical point for any established, more traditional business. This Silicon Valley investor says that any company designed for success in the 20th century is doomed to failure in the 21st. I don't particularly want to be that negative, but I am a little bit concerned because I went to a conference last week and there was a raft of companies there on stage going, we've been around for more than 100 years, we consider this to be a real asset. And I think at some point in the future, definitely, but right now, I think it would be a much wiser thing to view that as a liability rather than an asset. So forget you have that, think about how you can structure an organization in a really flexible way to weather all this change that's coming next, and then go back to work out how you can play on that heritage and all the skills that you have in your business. So the future is maybe a little bit uncertain for organizations, but for us on an individual level, I think it's actually quite bright. So in terms of the way we interact with companies and corporations, I think there's some quite exciting things ahead. We're going to have the ability to have almost every product and every brand experience personalized to us. So I sense that this has been a theme of today.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's had mixed receptions in some ways.
Okay, I'm a massive believer in the idea of personalization. I believe that there will definitely be a place to go into a store or order a £10 white t-shirt off the shelf. But I also think any time you want to have an item personalized, that option will exist, be at arm's reach somewhere, I guess. And there's some interesting developments in this space, actually. This is Nitan, who is actually over the river in Somerset House. That's where they're based. They are developing personalizable knitwear. So any design you want, you can put into your own sweater. Sounds relatively basic, but the point here is that the personalization is inherent in the product. So it's not just a surface point of difference. The whole structure of the product is completely different because they produce things in this new way. Romy is a Parisian skincare company that in relatively basic ways is enabling customers to personalize their skincare. So you can put different capsules into a machine and it mixes up your own moisturizer. I think come 2035, we'll be able to understand, or have companies understand our DNA, understand our lifestyles, and come up with almost scientifically proven recipes that will work for us as individuals. Also, yeah, as I said, brand experiences can be completely personalized and also almost will become more customer-centric, I think. This is actually a shot of, well, almost any retailer you'd care to mention. Another thing I noticed about last week is all sorts of brands would very strongly argue that they're customer-centric. This is a shot of the traditional customer-centric experience at the moment. in some ways not that customer-centric. The customer still has to do a lot of work. They have to go to the store, put the items, find the items they want, try them on, return things, all this kind of stuff. Enclothed is a new breed of company that truly puts the customer at its heart. They use data and human stylists sitting side by side to understand what customers want. Every month they send them 10 items in the post for them to try on. Anything the customer wants to buy, they keep. Anything they don't, they send back. And it's exactly the same cost as items on the high street as well. So I think we really truly need to put the customer at the heart of everything we do and almost start to wrap our brand experiences around them and make their lives really simple. We've already seen that our individual voices in this decade or for the past 10 years have had a lot more power than they have before. And a lot of people have referred to this as the social media revolution. In some cases, in some ways, this is very true. But in other ways, I think this is actually a return it's more of a return to ancient norms in some way. So this shot here is actually of some Roman graffiti. It's kind of Roman Twitter or Facebook, if you like, where they draw different pictures on the walls to communicate different ideas with their peers, to say things to their friends or anger their rivals, whatever they wanted to say. But they had a way of communicating to a small group around them. So that continued for a number of years. And then we had, of course, the printing press, and that meant that it was possible for one person to communicate to many. But it's really only been in the past 100 years or so that we've had things like film, TV, radio, newspapers that's really changed that curve, that one or a handful of people could communicate to thousands or millions in one go. And now in the past 10 years or so, of course, we have Twitter, we have blogging, we have YouTube. So one person, again, can talk to a handful of people. And so now what we have is the media that we consume sometimes is mass media, but sometimes there's social media. And in a similar way, I think the way we work with companies is going to change as well and follow a similar pattern, actually, just slightly later on. And the reason for this is that a lot of the tools that were previously only available to large corporations over the last 100 years or so are now becoming accessible to individuals or small communities, say on a high street. And yeah, this is really, really changing production. And there's all sorts of things that are enabling this type of thing. So if we think about how even today, communities have different ways of organizing themselves. They can access crowdfunding. They can, or soon, I think, will be able to fuel their own manufacturing and distribution almost for free through green energy. They'll be able to manufacture things either in their own homes or locally on the high street. And then, as we know, as I've just discussed, they'll be able to promote things as well using tools that are almost for free. And this means that even now, some industries that we would consider untouchable are beginning to be challenged. And this is one of my favorite examples. This is Local Motors. They have 92 full-time employees and about 53,000 community members who all contribute to new designs or refinements for different cars. Now, the industry standard for coming up with a new idea and bringing a new car and bringing it to market, that costs about $3 billion at this point. Local Motors brought this car to market for about $3 million. So that's 1,000 times different. So local Motors could come up with 1,000 different new models of car for the same price as General Motors producing one. It's really quite remarkable. And at this point, they're taking pre-orders for their 3D printed car. And I imagine at this point, it's relatively primitive. But if we fast forward 20 years, imagine what they're going to do to the automotive industry. And so it's not just in the way that we do business or work with others that we're going to have more control, but also within our immediate spheres of influence, we're going to have more control as well, especially in terms of our self-diagnosis, self-treatment. this is one of my favorite examples. This is the UCheck system. It uses a smartphone, or the user's smartphone, to analyze a urine strip. And it can detect information on diabetes, liver problems, any complications in pregnancy, for the cost of a $25 kit that you can run in your home. And this replaces or challenges a device in labs that costs about $2,000 at this point. So yeah, we're going to be able to see what's going on within our bodies, and then when we know, we're going to be able to treat it much better as well. There's a number of different university labs working on 3D printed medicine at the moment, taking different compounds and putting them into a pill that's personalized for each individual user. So, and what that means, or personalized medicine, of course, means that the treatment's going to be much, much better too. So even if we don't print medicine in our own homes, maybe we go up to the local pharmacist to do it, but it will work much better. And actually across the board, I think, really, yeah, for everyone around the world, I think pretty much opportunities are going to get much better, or life is going to get much better. We're going to have more mobility, more opportunities, and more equality as well. Again, I keep coming back to technology, I guess, but it's just remarkable what's happening in this space at the moment. This is a gadget that was demoed last week at South by Southwest. It's a haptic headset that has sensors on the top, and it can detect where various walls are and aren't nearby. And then when it detects something, it just projects a little buzz into the headset. And what they did, they put this on a set of volunteers, blindfolded them, and then asked them to walk through their office. And they found that about 3/4 of people could walk through without bumping into things. They're also working on something, this next thing blows my mind a little bit, but it can look at your brain waves, and any conscious thought that you have, it can actually turn it into a spoken word that other people can hear. So for people who can't speak, of course, then suddenly they'll have a voice. They're also imagining people, I don't know, English people going off to Spain, wanting to order ham, egg, and chips, and being able to simply think that and have their smartwatch or their phone say it in Spanish, and making, going abroad really, really easy. So it's, very early days for this technology, but these are just some of the things that will be possible. And of course, fast forward 20 years, imagine what's going to be possible. So, and it's not just going to be life in developed countries that's going to be better, but I think more importantly, life in developing countries is going to be much, much better. There's great predictions for life expectancy to increase all over the world. We're expecting to see about, the number of people in poverty halve to about 500 million come 2035. And the reason for this is that people's economic prospects is going to increase quite significantly. And again, one of the reasons for this is because people will be more connected. I said at the start that 7 billion people are going to be online by 2035, and the reason for this is because so many people from developing countries will have access to the internet. All of these devices is going to become much, much cheaper. The wireless access is going to become almost free. Even today, you can learn coding or about 20 different languages to a very high standard, or access a raft of lectures from Stanford for free through a device. So people will be able to learn so much more, and then when they have some skills or know new things that they can contribute, then they'll be able to sell their skills online through the internet as well. So generally, I think things are looking pretty good. But I think the one key thing to keep in mind is that, as I said at the start, human nature isn't really going to change, whereas the world around us is going to be changing so quickly. So the key thing to manage is almost all this level of uncertainty. I think that the need for counsellors and psychologists come 2035 is going to be the same or greater than it is now because of this huge rate of change. So that's really all I've got time for today, but just to think about what to do next as a result of all this hopefully new and interesting information. The first thing is to really try and get your head around this level of exponential change. As this professor of physics says, the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. And he actually said this back in 1969. So it was important then, and it's even more important now. And I think it's not just a case of getting your own head around this, but going back to your companies and your teams and actually starting to have conversations around what this means for you if you're not already, and how you can take advantage of some of these changes. And that would be my second recommendation, actually, is to really see this as an opportunity and to try and embrace the change that's on its way, because if you can see it as an opportunity, it's going to be incredible. It can transform businesses and how we work in the most incredible way. So yes, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, and you can also profit from surfing as well. So yeah, that's everything I've got time for. But if you want any more help with how to get to grips with what's coming next or how to take advantage of it, then you can come and have a chat to me. My contact details are here. And also we have a free email list of different trend updates and innovation updates. So if you'd like to sign up to that, you can give me a business card. So thank you very much. Cheers.